Welcome to HealingUS Podcast. We have Lenny with us today. You have quite a resume, Lenny. You are an RN holistic coach, yoga
Mm-hmm.
teacher, Reiki Master, a mom of five, and a grandma of three.
Now it's
You got
almost four.
almost four.
Yeah, four due in September. So I'm really excited. Found out this
Oh,
weekend, this past
awesome.
couple of days.
Oh, well, congratulations. Congratulations. So, I hear you have quite a story, and I'm so happy that you came on the podcast, and I'm really looking forward to diving in with you.
So I don't know where you would like me to start, but
Yeah, so tell us a little bit. I know you've had quite a journey yourself, and that's what led you to your holistic coaching and this new way of life. If you want to dive in a little bit about your story and your upbringing, and what got you to start doing all this wonderful stuff.
sure. Well, uh, our past always, what I believe, always shapes our future, and I wouldn't change anything, and so there's a little trigger warning here. And I hope it's okay. I mean, I don't
Hmm.
know how much I could talk about, but I was born into a family of 11 children. Um, and but I felt really alone. It was like I was surrounded by all these people, but I lived in sort of like a bubble, I guess, from the beginning. I never really felt like I fit in. So he's a little different. And my oldest sibling, his name was Joey. He was in Vietnam, and quite a few years of a difference in age, obviously. But he was subjected to uh, Agent Orange and, of course, the Vietnam War, and um, had severe PTSD. Um, he would come home, and I would say I was between the ages of 6 and 9, but he was very frightening. Um, he would go on these rampages, and anything would trigger him. And I was scared of him, like beyond scared of my brother. And so from that moment, from when my brother would come home, my siblings and I, would see his car. We'd come home from the school bus, and if we saw his car there, we'd all like hide in the closet. You just never knew what would trigger him,
Mm-hmm.
and he would throw me against the wall. Um, and my parents were. He was more of a parent than my parents were at the time, and he had tried to commit suicide well, he tried twice before he actually did it. But with all these kids, it seemed like I was always the one that was around when it happened. The first two times, and I remember them like they were yesterday. The third time, I was 9, and it finally happened. It was gruesome. Wasn't something I don't think I should talk about it here, but um, so my first reaction was actually relief, which is really sad to say, but it was. I was
Hmm.
terrified. I had PTSD from an early age. I lived in fear. I was always living in fear. And it's funny how my other siblings, we all have a different story.
Yeah, different
You
perspective
can
of what's going on.
right, and you can live
Yeah.
in the same household and have a different perspective.
Hmm.
Well, when he died, and I'm going to try to make this fast because it's a
It's okay.
long story, but when he died, there was a priest who was a friend of the family, actually. Um, and he came around to console the family. And I was an easy target because I yearned for affection. Um, I mean, and now totally forgive my parents. I understand now, having five kids, how it must have been like not being able to pay attention or whatever. But honestly, um, never got read to. My mom didn't have a license until she was, I think, 55. And so it's not like I went shopping or did anything with my mom or got read to or coddled or anything like that. My father was the handball champion of the world and the Golden Glove champion. He owned a body shop, so he was working a lot and he was traveling, and just to have him pet my head at night to kind of say goodnight or whatever, it was like the best feeling in the world, but it didn't happen very often. So I was a trigger. It was like,
Mhm.
I mean, I was that easy target. So my nickname was a leech,
Mhm.
and anybody who walked in the door, I'd like hold on to their necks. I'm only 5 feet tall. I was always pretty little, and the priest was no exception. So he targeted me. I was abused from 9 to almost 12. And at the time, things are so different now. It would be unheard of for a parent to like say, yes, you could tuck her in. Yes, you can give her a bath. But honestly, that's just what happened. And it was, um, he took away my innocence. And from there, that was it. It was my life completely changed. I lived in more isolation. Um, you know, of course, he told me that it was our secret. There was, the typical, you know,
Grooming behavior. Yeah.
keeping it under the wraps. And I never said anything until I was in my 30s, actually.
Mm.
And I did go to the Union County prosecutors. I did go to the archdiocese, and it was past the statute of limitations. They did take him out of the priesthood, and they did give me therapy. That's what they gave me. I didn't ask for any money or anything like that,
Mm.
but I went to like maybe probably 18 years of therapy. Um, but it really set me up for this life where um, but that's why I say I wouldn't change it, because I know that's why I got into my yoga, into my Reiki, into my meditation, into healthy eating. It all stems
Mhm.
from being hurt. And I started, of course, you feel like you're not worth anything. And my body was just there,
Mhm.
you go through all
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah, I mean, it, I'm sorry you went through that, but I hear you on the flip note that those adversity creates something beautiful if you let it,
It
and
does.
it's the symbolism of the lotus, right, growing out of the mud, and it's that's a lot to carry as a little
So
kid.
weird that you said that, because at the end of every yoga practice, I say, may you
Mhm.
live like the lotus at home in the muddy water.
Ah, there you go. There's your wraparound. Yeah,
That's the fact that you brought that up. Yeah. So that led me to being very obsessed with my body, and led me into my eating disorder that I almost died from. So before all that, though, I didn't even bring up at 2 years old, I had spinal meningitis, and I almost died. So I almost died a few times in my life, but I was two, and I was in the hospital for 3 weeks in a fetal position, and the doctors were like, "This isn't good. This isn't good." And it's really weird because I remember the doctor speaking with my parents when I was in a crib in the hospital, like in a fetal position. And residual effects from that was I lost hearing out of my right ear, and I have some heart from the bacteria.
Mhm.
My valves were affected in my heart. So that started my life off at 2. And then after the abuse, you know, I got obsessed with my body, and felt like that's what I had to offer, I guess. And um, started off with a diet. I lost, oh my God, I'm 5 feet tall. So I was about 85 pounds. I got very,
Oh,
very little.
yeah.
That's little for anybody.
Yeah.
Um, and I had my period had stopped. And my mom, I would wear sweats all the time. And I was 16, and my mom was, I said I didn't get my period because I didn't know, my mom brought me to the doctor. I got undressed, and the doctor said she needs to eat. That was the recommendation, that I have to eat. So my Italian father, you're eating, you're sitting down, and you're going to eat. Right. So my father was like, and he was scared. Not my father wasn't really scary, but my father was like,
And this is before, like, they really, I mean, eating disorders were not talked about.
right. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
right.
there's no diagnosis really of this.
Right. So the answer was just eat. So we know how that goes.
Yeah.
So I learned how to purge and throw up, and from somebody in high school. And I remember the first thing I threw up. I remember what I was doing. And now I'm 60. So that was a long time ago, but I remember it like it was yesterday. And that led me down to growing up for 6 years of my life, the worst 6 years of my whole life. And I almost died from that too. There were plenty of times that I'm on wherever I was, where it didn't matter. It could have been throwing up in a woods. It could have been throwing up in a dumpster. It could have been at somebody's house. I was up to maybe sometimes 6 times a day. And I remember being on a bathroom floor many times. God, please just take me. I just wanted to die. I just did not want to be here. And it's ironic. I was dating my husband, who is my husband now. We're almost married 39 years. He never knew. That's how secret. I was really good at being clean, at being secretive. I knew every trick in the book. I was ruining my teeth, which my teeth are ruined. I lost all my enamel. As I was throwing up blood, I had to be in the hospital so many times from electrolyte imbalance. And of course, they didn't know it. And they're thinking it's from my spinal meningitis that I'm getting these problems with my heart. But it was because I was throwing up so much. And what led me home was the fact that I wanted to have children. I got married when I was 21. So you figure now 16, now I'm 21. I threw up on my wedding day. I threw up it was on my honeymoon, everything. And I wasn't getting pregnant because I wanted to have kids. And I wanted to have kids for the wrong reason, because I just needed somebody to love. It was like this path. It was so
trauma
hard.
That trauma snowball still going.
Right. So, come to find out, I was like, this is from throwing up. Of course, the first thing I think of, it's because I'm throwing up. And so I had to figure out. Now, my whole life, even though it sounds weird, I've always been into health and wellness. Even when I was throwing up, I was still exercising. I still knew, like, my father, to get the attention of my dad, because he's was an athlete, he'd get up at like 5:00, 5:30, and he'd literally like bang pots and pans. Come on, you're gonna sleep your life away. Who wants to come with me to go running? Who wants to do push-ups and pull-ups? I'd get up because I'd get up because I wanted that dad. I wanted my dad's attention. So it was so good because that's why I'm so disciplined and have such consistency and discipline. It's from my dad. But so the fact that I thought, okay, it's got to be my throwing up that was keeping me from getting pregnant, um, I started on my path. That's when I started my path to this everlasting health and wellness, the five pillars, all of that was researching. So back then, we had libraries, you guys,
Mhm.
back in those
No
days.
Google?
So there wasn't phones, right? So I totally went to the library, tried to figure out what then, to make a long story short, I found the connection between fat and your brain.
Mm,
And I started really day by day, literally crossing the days off a calendar, really seriously, the days I didn't throw up.
mm.
And it was, you can't, you can only get through something by going through it. You can't,
Absolutely.
right? You can't, there's no quick fix. There's no easy way. You can't go over, you can't go under. I had to go through it, right?
Mhm.
So every day, crossing off, okay, today I didn't throw up. Now, I'm making this sound very easy. It was not easy. This was so hard. I would tell you the first thing I started doing was eating coconut oil, which was the fat that now they do this with
Mhm.
people with epilepsy and keto and all of that. And I'm not promoting any diet. I'm just saying that the fat kept my brain.
Pets are vitally important. You're so far ahead. Like, I mean, at this time that you're going through this, you're actually finding out information that, like, now we're talking about today and health and wellness. You know, you're talking. You know, when this was happening, was this what, late '90s, early 2000s
Oh my
area?
God. Oh, I don't even know. Let's see. I got married. I got married in '86. So yeah, early
Yeah.
'90s, not even.
So,
So
like, that, it was unheard of. They were still telling you to stay away from fats, right? Right? Fats are
exactly.
are the
Ex-
problem
ex-
nutrition.
exactly. And I'm telling you, it's what kept me sane.
Mm,
Because of course, if you don't nourish your body, what happens? You're not nourishing your brain. You're
mhm.
going to be sporadic. You're going to, so you are totally depleted of nutrients if you're bulimic and or anorexic or, I'm trying to heal every day. And believe me, I'd wake up in a cold sweat thinking, screaming, because I'm thinking I threw up that night before, the day before I was having nightmares. Um, it was horrible. It was really hard. It was like, getting off drugs or
Yeah.
whatever. It was, yeah, it was really,
Total body
really
reset.
exactly. But it set me up on this path to, wow, there's something to this, um, this healthy eating stuff. It really does. No, you hear about it, I preach it every day now is you are what you eat. You're not only what you eat, you're what your food eats.
Mhm.
So, to me, my body, my brain is everything. Nourishing, nourishing it is everything to me. Um, because of my severe PTSD, because of my brain trauma, which we'll get to, um, you know, so that set me on the path to healing. But come to find out, me getting pregnant wasn't due to that. I had infertility problems. I happened to be born with just one ovary. And I think from the priest, I got a pelvic inflammatory disease back, back,
Right.
which was never diagnosed,
Mhm.
which just damaged one of my tubes. So they did a major surgery. Um, and the doctor, we had to figure out why I was getting pregnant because it had
Mhm.
nothing to do with my husband. When I woke up from surgery, the doctor said, held in my hand, it'll be a miracle if you get pregnant, but miracles happen. And he had to take out the tube that was damaged. So now you might not understand this, but I have one tube and one ovary on opposite sides.
Wow.
So for
That
for me to,
that would be a miracle.
right. So for me to get pregnant would be, crazy, right?
Mm,
So I ended up getting pregnant with my first kid 36 years ago. And I was high risk because they were like, whoa, you know?
mm-hmm.
And so I didn't use anything after that because I'm figuring that was just shot in the
By
dark,
sheer luck.
lucky, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And 6 months later, I got pregnant again.
Yeah, well, once it
Uh,
happens once, then it gets easier,
that
unfortunately.
was
Or
that was
unfortunately and
it. So
unfortunately.
yeah, so I ended up
Yeah.
having the two within 15 months, and then 2 years, 2 years, so four boys and a girl. And my husband had a vasectomy, believe it or not. So, but before all that, see, I'm going off track here, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry. But at
Yeah.
19, I had a major car accident. I wasn't driving, but we're getting ready to go to this club. Nobody's drinking, it's just I'm in the back seat and getting on my shoes because we're almost at the club. And the guy makes a U-turn, and that was it. I don't remember the accident, but this was right before the seatbelt law came into effect. I got thrown against the frame of the car. So I had a fractured skull and a facial nerve crushed in my face. That's why my face is not even, if this comes out and you guys are like, she's got a cricket face. Well, I
I
had,
don't say that we would ever do that,
well,
but
no, listen, I have come such a long way being on camera, but I turn a certain way because, and I'm very grateful. I wouldn't even change that. I have about 85% back because I happen to be young, and I did go to rehab for a year to try move my face again. But I was in Mount Sinai, New York, and the my dad back then they shave your hair. They Now it's so different, but um, I had to be moved to Mount Sinai from JFK because they really weren't doing anything. And we found a specialist, my father, Dr. Eden. Thank you, Dr. Eden. But he operated me right away, took out the bone for my hearing to relieve the pressure on my facial nerve, saved the bone, literally. Um, I became deaf in this ear, in my left ear, which I didn't even know what the heck was happening because I didn't know. The doctor would come in, twitch your eyes, move your eyebrows, smile. I don't know what's going on,
Right.
I'm out of it. And I don't really realize that I'm not hearing because I already don't hear out of my right ear. So I was dating my husband then.
Mhm.
And I remember I'm like, I didn't see any mirrors or whatever. And the last day, I'm like, can I see a mirror? He goes, you sure you want to see a mirror? I see that I can't move my face.
Never
never
go
go
when
when
someone
someone
goes,
goes,
"You
"You
sure?"
sure?"
So at 19,
Heart
right?
Heart
sink.
sink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? At 19, like you're in your prime, and it's like, this guy's never gonna stay with me, my husband. And I have to wear my big Urkel glasses because when you damage a facial nerve, it's connected to your tear ducts, your saliva, your tears. So I would only cry on one side. I realized that my saliva wasn't working when, we're going home from New York after a therapy thing, and I want a pretzel, those
Hmm.
big pretzels, and I can't
Yep.
really chew it because if you don't have saliva, you're
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
not
it
Not
gonna
gonna
was,
work.
work.
yeah, it was so traumatic. And so for a year, I went back and forth to New York with my dad, and he would drive me. So that was nice, but to have attention from my dad for that. But yeah, so I'm totally deaf in my left ear, and I have hearing loss in my right ear from my spinal.
Did you suffer from a TBI as well?
Yeah,
Tra-
traumatic brain injury. Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, so that was that. So all these things all these things in my life led me to, I got certified in yoga. I got just to calm down my fight or flight,
Hmm.
because I was always in fight or flight, which most of us are. Believe it or not, we are in that low simmer fight or flight, which is detrimental, and it will affect us at, in
Yeah, most
Most
of
of
us.
us, I like to call it the window of tolerance, and you got the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems, and a lot of us don't have a window of tolerance whatsoever, and especially when you're someone that has gone through as much trauma as you have, especially early childhood trauma, having an illness like that. You Life has obviously been testing you and your resiliency, and you've stepped up to the plate each time it's occurred. And kudos to you for being able to kind of have that inward motivation to go, I want something better. I want something better. And even with like your pregnancy, you said like it was for selfish reasons at first, and it seems like because you wanted it, you did the actions that were behind the want, even though maybe it was not for the right reasons. But in lieu of that, you transformed into it being a beautiful experience for yourself.
And
They're
getting
such a
what you
gift.
ultimately want.
They are the reason I'm alive. My children.
Yeah,
Yeah,
children.
They
Children
children are
are
the
the best.
best.
No, because no, they saved my life, because I would have
Mm.
died from bulimia.
Mm,
I really believe that. It was so bad. And they literally saved my life, because if I was not striving to, like, I need to have a child to not throw up.
mm,
Seriously, that was my motivation to do it. And then I was like, I have to breastfeed, because that's going to keep me occupied. Because in my head, I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going to throw up if I'm pregnant, and there's no way I'm going to throw up if I'm breastfeeding. So my kids never had a bottle. They never had formula. That was my mission. It was
mm.
like, and I'm not saying it's whatever anybody chooses to do, feeding their kid, that's fine. But it was like, that's my gift. It was like I'm going to give my children this gift. I will not. They are my everything.
It's that unconditional love.
It's
And that
it's
bond.
just
Yeah.
they are such a gift. And they did save my life. But yeah, so each thing was like, I need to, my nervous system, the whole fight or flight, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, we need the fight or flight, but we also need the rest and digest.
Mm,
And we're just, especially if you live in an urban area and you're around cars and you're around that noise, you are in that low simmer state of fight or flight, which over time, and that's why I preach restorative yoga and meditation and getting out there in nature without your earbud. I wear an earbud now because I got to hear you, but
mm.
and I'm grateful for this earbud, because then I can hear you.
Right.
But right. So but when you're in nature, go out there and be, just be in the moment, listen to your feet on the ground, listen to the birds, listen to that brings you into the state of mindfulness, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
um so as the years went by, I wanted to do more, and I turned, let's see, I was 44 when I decided I wanted to be an RN. So
As one does.
had all my kids. My best friend at the time was a nurse, and I stayed at her house quite often. That was my like time away from my kids. So it was like I got a little reprieve. My husband and I had that little, I don't like going on vacations or things like that, but I go to my best friend's house in Long Island, and I have my room. It's Aunt Nora's room. So I go up there, and she had all of her nursing books. And between all this, I was a cosmetologist, I was a dental assistant, so we left out a lot of my life. But the point is, I've always been into health and wellness. I went and got my nutrition cert. I went and did my Reiki courses, got to a Reiki Master. My first I've been I've been a personal trainer for over 25 years. So I got AFA certified and back in the day and kept it current. And I've done a lot, but the point is, it's always been health and wellness. I mean, I've never, any book I've picked up, it's either spirituality or health and wellness, always toward that. So go in a room, and we didn't have phones then. So I'd pick out her nursing books. I've always been an avid reader. So reading those. And one day I'm like, I want to become a nurse. So I come home and I put down all the paperwork in front of my husband. And I'm going, I'm going to become a nurse. And he's like, what?
All
Because you
right.
hate, he goes, no, he goes, you hate throw up. How are you going to become a nurse? I'm like, I'm going to do it. I said, I have some prerequisites from when I was a dental assistant. I'm going to go to the college. I'm going to see what they'll transfer and blah, blah, blah. And that night, I think one of my kids got sick. Wouldn't you know it? And I'm like, I'm going to do this. Let's do it. So we're like bringing the kid to the bathtub and drop in the bathtub. But gosh darn it, I became a nurse, and it took me through. It took me 3 years, and they got all the provisions for my hearing disability in place. So a lot of times I had notes written for me. I was able to. We didn't have the phone, so I was able to tape record classes. And I remember I've always exercised and I always walked, and I'd have my headphones and be listening to the lectures and going back and forth. And I graduated. And it's funny, my son graduated from Princeton University the same year I graduated from nursing school, 2011. So
That was a great summer then.
yes, very busy, very busy. But so it's just the five pillars of Lenny for everlasting health and wellness, which is the blueprint that I had written, is all of the things that help me out of despair onto this road of being, there's no pill, there's no surgery, there's no shake, there's no supplement that's going to get you there. But all the little things that I've implemented has made me feel at 60 better than I've ever felt in my whole life. So we're all going to age, right? But that's fine with me as far as aesthetics
So how does one
goes.
go through
like these 5 pillars? Do you have like a workbook to work through? Do you
It's a
do
blueprint
classes?
that I did with a gentleman. His name is Kevin Miles. And I met him when COVID happened. Everybody had to change gears. But before COVID, as you could tell, I live in a log home. And this was all a manifestation. My husband and I built this house. Took us 3 years, but I literally manifested this, put it on a manifestation board. Now, when you do manifestation, you can't sit there and put something on a board and just go, I hope that I get a log home. No, we had to work towards it. We planned it. And my dream was to have my yoga studio, personal training, gym, Reiki, nutritional, all in one place. And that's what we have. So downstairs, my husband built a lot of it with the trees from outside. Like we have a lot of the wood in there. It's very small, it's very small. But then I did, restorative yoga classes, Reiki, personal training, and then COVID happens. And I'm very tactile. It's one-on-one. It's very small. So I had to change gears like everybody else. So I was on a lot of podcasts. I had my own podcast. I'm going to start it up again. But I was on a lot of health and wellness podcasts, talking about what I do. And this one gentleman was on with me. He lives in California, never met him personally, but he loved me. And he like, wow, your story's incredible. You really have to do something. So I said, but I have no idea. So he does this stuff all the time, the blueprints and the courses. So he did this with me. So what I did was it's a blueprint. You don't have to do anything. You listen, I tape things. His book is in there about nutrition. So he collaborated with me. And it's on my link tree.
Awesome.
So anybody can purchase it if they want. And but if you're looking for a quick fix, I'm not your gal. I'm just not.
It doesn't really exist.
Well, it doesn't, but people want that.
Of
And
course.
it just takes an everyday just doing it. And motivation really has nothing to do with it. It's motivation to me is just doing things when you feel like it. You just have to do it. You just have to find your why, make it so important that it gets your ass out of bed. You know what I mean?
I find like creating a ritual on these things is really important, because if you look at it like, oh, I got to do that thing for myself, like you could get it, you have to make it like a special event that is endearing, and there's some kind of passion romanticizing of this thing for yourself, right? Like I got into meditation, yoga, and a lot of Eastern philosophy, medicine in general, in my recovery path. And I remember at first I was really excited about it because it's something new. And then, it could become like mundane day in and day out as time plays out. So, me being in recovery from substance abuse, I knew a lot of the romanticizing with my addiction had to do with the ritual before you get high, right? The having to find the money, having to go find the drugs, meeting up with the people, the whole entire scene that takes place. But the same thing applies for health as well,
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
Like,
I always say getting started is the easy part.
mm-hmm.
It's
It's
because
exciting.
everybody comes to me if I'm doing any nutritional counseling or personal training, especially. Oh my God, I'm so excited. I cannot wait to feel really good they give it, okay, they give it a month, say.
hmm
And then it's like the despair, right? But then I like to say, how long did it take you to get to this point in your life, right?
hmm
Sometimes it's 40 years. With the people that I work with older people like my age, like 60 and 50, 60, 70. Sometimes it's 40 years before you come and you want help. So if it took you 40 years to get to this point, you're going to give yourself a month
Right.
you got it day in, day out, make it an
hmm
everyday thing. Just keep going, find your why, and make it so important that, to me, in my temple, I mean, as a nurse, I've seen so many people in wheelchairs, and I worked with assisted living and dementia and people in wheelchairs so early because of not doing strength training and not taking care of their body. Like,
hmm
even if you had millions of dollars, if you're not healthy, like, and you hear this all
It
the
doesn't
time,
matter.
right? Like, what good is it? Like, what good is it a beautiful car and a beautiful house if you feel like crap? And people were like, it's never too late. I really don't say that because I've seen
hmm
so many people. It's too late if you're laying in a hospital bed dying. It's late.
Oh
You
yeah.
got to just do it. And I'm
Yep.
Yep. I mean, we can't. Time is our biggest asset. Our health is one of our biggest assets, right? And a lot of people don't look at it that way. We take it for granted, especially when we're young, because we just
You
exactly.
think
think
I
you're
you're
think
gonna
gonna
live
live
forever
forever
when
when
you're
you're
young.
young. So
exactly. Yeah, I mean, we all have that. I mean, it just is. I mean, that way with
hmm
kids these days. But
Been
been
like
like
that
that
for a
and
while.
I'm
forever.
not and I'm not trying to sound dire either. I don't want to. I don't want to sound that way. Take a little tiny goal, just tiny. That's the problem too. People overwhelm themselves with things, and it's just too much. But just like I said about bulimia, it was a everyday thing. It was like, okay, I can cross this off the calendar now. Literally, I had a big
Hmm.
calendar. Cross it off. Make it a small goal. You know what I mean? Slow and
Hmm.
steady wins the race, and it's a marathon, not a sprint. I always say those things. You know.
Well, as a health coach, you're combating that instant gratification, right? Which is perpetuated, in our society as a whole, us as humans in general. One of the human conditions is we always look for convenience. That's what's allowed us to create societies today, and microwaves and cars and this. We want to make our lives more convenient, but in doing so, it's a gift and the curse that we all hold as humans, because we're attracted to it. It allows us to innovate and problem solve, but it also, our lives can become too convenient to the point where it becomes its own addiction almost, where it's so hard to break out of that mindset and take slow steps to set goals, to commit things on a long-term basis without seeing results right away. It's a very difficult process, and when we're coaching individuals, it's something that every person is different how you get them over that obstacle. You could lay the groundwork for them, but they have a different way of
Ending
finding
it,
it,
if
if
you
you
will.
will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there's, yep, I was gonna, you said something and I wanted to elaborate on that, but I forgot.
The instant
Also,
gratification, or
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
we do want instant gratification. That's what I meant about before, where it's like the quick, of course, the kid people want the quick fix and the pill and this, or the supplement or the injection or the surgery. And but we're not learning new habits, we're not
No.
learning new things. And it's this is where mindfulness comes into play with my pillars. One of them is mindfulness, because mindfulness, when you learn mindfulness, you are more mindful, obviously, right? So you're more mindful of what you're putting in your mouth, whether you exercise or not, the words you're spewing out at people, the
Hmm.
text that you're going to send. You're going to think first before you send it. And mindfulness is something like, I've been working on. All these things came around. I want to say it's got to be 21 years now. I've been practicing yoga, mindfulness, Reiki, nutrition, counseling, all of that. I did write a book for children. I've done so many things, but I worked with autistic children, kids on the spectrum in Newark, New Jersey. I developed a program called Catch, Creating Acceptance Through Changing Habits, and I implemented teaching yoga to these children, and it was so rewarding.
Mm.
And from there, I just got an itch to like write this book called Cat on the Mat. So I did write the book. It is in my link tree, and it's available from Barnes and Noble. And I would say that it's probably good for ages 1 through 8.
Mm.
But yeah, so that's there too.
Yeah, that's great. I love like with the push to get children involved with the mindfulness, holistic health in general. That like even Snoop Dogg
Has
has
a
a
meditation
meditation
out
out
right
right
now
now
for
for
kids,
kids,
which
which
is
is
No,
totally
totally
that's
wild
wild
to
to
me.
me. But I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. So my 4-year-old is it takes a little bit more convincing to sit still for a little bit, but my 6-year-old daughter, she loves it. I have her doing yoga poses already, and she's we do breath techniques and try to learn that to decompress or de-escalate situations. And it it really hit me the other day because we had a birthday party. It was my daughter's birthday last week, and there was someone kid crying at her party, and I saw her go up to him and tell him to take deep breaths and like do the breaths with him to get him through it. And I was like, it's working, you know.
no, it's amazing. That
Yeah.
could you imagine? And this is where I think one of the questions you had asked me, or written me about
Mhm.
how did my brother, what kind of impact did that have on my path? Well, can you imagine if this was all around when my brother was alive? I always think of that. Like,
Mhm.
my brother had such severe PTSD, and one of my yoga certifications is in with PTSD and, calming that all down. And um, could you imagine like just having that skill
Mhm.
and being able to just sit even for a couple of minutes, few
Mhm.
minutes, practicing your inhale and exhale, making your exhale longer than your inhale. And your exhale is when your parasympathetic nervous system comes into play. Um, it might have saved his life.
Absolutely.
I would go as far as that because restorative yoga, I want to say, is one of I say this about all the tools and all of my pillars, but restorative yoga, I don't know if you know what restorative yoga is, but absolutely saved my life because there's so many different yoga modalities, but restorative yoga is the art of doing nothing. And yoga, most of it is moving, which is fine. Any type of yoga is beautiful,
Mhm.
but you got to think if you're moving, you are bringing up your nervous system.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm not saying that's bad, but I do enough of that. I do enough strength training. I work out like a beast. I'm walking with 25-pound vets. I'm doing enough of that. I'm doing enough stressing the body. So when I got certified in restorative yoga, I kept going for all these different certifications in yoga because I wanted to get a feel of all different types. And I remember being in a restorative yoga pose, and you're in the most comfortable position. Okay. So say, do you know child's pose?
Mhm.
Okay. So
Yep.
say
When you're
I'm
face
in
down on
child's
your knees.
pose,
Yeah.
right? And you're there for like 10 minutes. Okay. And I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Oh, to myself, what am I doing here? What, this is crazy. This is such a waste of time. I should be like, this is not even active. I'm not burning calories. I'm blah, 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 blah. And come to find out, it was the best gift ever in my life. And
Mhm.
people just don't get it. When I talk about it, they're like, oh, that sounds so great. But if you go to my YouTube channel on my link tree, I've got maybe 4 practices there that I did during COVID. One was I did a fundraiser for the vets, and you'll definitely see what it's about. But then
Mhm.
it's like people are like, I'm not going to do this. That's like an hour and a half I could do that anywhere. But this is why it's the hardest yoga practice to do because you're doing nothing. Does that make sense to you? It's
Yeah, absolutely.
the elements are warm, quiet, dark, still, and safe.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's
So,
slowing
slowing
somebody
somebody
down
down
so
so
they
they
can
like
heal and
those are
actually
the
do it
elements,
themselves.
right? So when I
yeah.
teach, I got all those elements in place. So if you think the opposite of that, you're bringing your nervous system up.
So let me just because we're running short on time. I'm sorry. My next person just walked in. I'm getting the signals. the So what kind of future? Where are you? You have the 5 pillars, and you're doing all this now. What kind of future aspirations do you have? Where do you want to go with this? What is your dream?
My dream is I'm living the dream.
You're already there.
That's
That's
I'm
beautiful.
so
beautiful. I love it.
happy, and I'm just honestly, I'm sure you've heard of TikTok. I've got about 114,000 followers on there, and so I do a health and wellness live every day. Pretty much, I go on and I spend at least an hour answering health and wellness questions from people. And I do some 70s lip sync because I'm reliving my
Love it.
childhood. Yes, and that's what I was doing. So I'm dressed in a 70s outfit.
Some inner
But
child therapy.
yes, it is therapy because I love 70s music and I never enjoyed my life when I was young. So I am reliving my life. And like I said on my link tree, if you guys are interested, you can go over. It's the Five Pillars of Lenny for everlasting health and wellness, and my book, The Cat on the Mat. And I do want to start up my podcast with Ageless Vitality, and start doing that again because I did have my podcast. It used to be called It's a New Dawn, but now I changed it because I want people to enjoy being older because it's amazing. It can be
Absolutely.
amazing.
Absolutely can be. Hey, life is just all about perspective, right?
It is, and you just have to take care of your health. You know what I mean? I mean, because if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. You really don't.
Absolutely.
Well, it was great. Absolutely. It was great. It was great meeting you and having you on the show. You have such a story, and I love what you transformed it in. And your lotus is making ripples right now to others. And I want you to keep what you're doing, and maybe I'll come over for a 70s dance party with the kids
one day.
You're always about. Where are you at?
Yeah, we're in Jersey.
You are? Oh, cool.
Yeah, so right in Monmouth County.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah, but yeah, thank you for coming.
And,
Well, thank
keep
you
doing
for
what you're
having
doing.
me. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
And yeah, so I will post all. I'll make sure that we post all your link trees and everything on our page, and so people can find that right below on our YouTube page. And hopefully I'll see you soon.
Sure. Thank you. Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.